Hi everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news. And like Beth has just said on Twitter, I can't speak about what is in the news this morning or later last night. Graham Potter to replace Erik ten Hag as Manchester United manager. I cannot speak. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpick here, and what I would say is the official line from Manchester United is that absolutely not. But the story is that Sir Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos have already held talks with Graham Potter, and they are a big fan of Graham Potter, and they see him as the replacement for Erik ten Hag if Erik ten Hag leaves. Now, the important thing to say here is this is not official. This is not Sir Jim Ratcliffe putting a statement out. This is from Neil Custis, who works for The Sun, who also said, I think De Gea was coming back, and also said that Qatar would have Man United in October. So straight away, we can probably take a big sigh of relief and say that his last two stories have missed the target more than Nicholas Jackson. But on the other hand, I will acknowledge, as I have many times in the past, that Neil Custis, not Sean Custis, Neil Custis has been a Manchester United correspondent for decades and is respected within the press pack around Manchester United. So, and there is quite a lot of detail in his article. He talks about Ineos being announced before Christmas, so next week. He talks about if Erik ten Hag loses against Liverpool on Sunday, that could be the final straw. So look, you know what? Some of you want Ten Hag out. This is what some of you want. And you know what? In a way, I feel like going, mic drop, told you so. I'm off down the pub to get some mulled wine. Ta-da! I'm back. Imagine, I should do that one day. Just leave it streaming and see how many people are there when I come back an hour later. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the mic drop moment, because you may not be happy with Erik ten Hag. You may not want Erik ten Hag. But why on earth would you think the grass is greener? You know what? If you're in your garden and you're a bit fed up of it, you know, you don't like the grass, you're not happy with the flowers, you haven't got a hot tub, and then somebody says, if you jump over that fence, you could be jumping into a pit of crocodiles. No, you're not allowed to have a look first. You could be jumping over a cliff, or you could be jumping in to a garden that's got, a swimming pool full of whatever you want, chocolates, sweets, women, men, whatever, the best party of your life. Are you going to jump over that fence when you've only got a 33% chance that you're jumping into something you like? I'm not jumping. The grass ain't greener. And I tell you what, this is what I mean. Why do we still have fans in our fan base that think the grass is greener? Ten Hag out! Ten Hag out! I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I was having this chat with fans the other night and I was saying, look, and Ricky, and I said, look, I take on board you're not happy with Ten Hag. I take it on board completely. But tell me it'll be better when every time we've sacked a manager, it's got worse. So for me, look, the situation, what did I describe it as last night? It's depressing being a Manchester United fan. It's depressing. I can't give you any good news. Stop searching for it. There isn't any. And I think this is the reality the apathy that's in the fan base. People think there's a happy ending. Stop looking for a happy ending. There isn't one. The Glazers own this football club. They've ran it bad for 20 years. Stop thinking there's a quick fix, happy ending. There isn't. If you want to change at this football club, then you better think of how to do it, and you better be in for the long run. Because, you know what? Maybe this is what should have happened 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Maybe everybody should have come together instead of arguing with each other, because it still goes on now. I was on social media last night and I could see Man United fans arguing with each other. I'm like, bloody hell. And you moan about the results, and you moan about why we're not in Europe, and you moan about the Glazers, and you've never come together as one to do what needed to be done. So we're all culpable. We're all culpable. There'll be people on social media this morning after this video going, Goldbridge is a Forest fan, Goldbridge is this, Goldbridge is that. Well, you know what? Goldbridge was quite happy to bring everybody together and work together. So, you know, I rest easy. You know, I rest easy because I know 100% I was happy, as this community was, to work with everybody. Other people didn't want to do it. It's very sad, it's very disappointing, but you know who you are, and you thought you could do it on your own, and you failed. Everybody should have come together, and I think we would have, the Glazers would be gone, but nobody ever wanted to do it. And the door's always open to that. The door is always open to that, but people don't want to do it because they want to ruffle their own feathers. And this is what I'm talking about. You're talking about Graham Potter potentially being next Man United manager. Absolutely not, and I'll tell you why. But big things need to be said about this, because I'm tired of people thinking Ten Hag out, like there's a better plan. Like there's a better plan. It's ridiculous. Of course there's not a better plan. We're still owned by the same people. It's incredible. Definitely feel like the fans have pushed this. Ollie did worse. Van Gaal did worse. And yet Erik ten Hag is still stuck with their purchases, says Slow Sports News. Sir Jim is just a temporary bailout. This club will have to sink further before Glazers and Sir Jim do a full sale to Qatar, says Julian. Well, I think that still could happen in 3 or 4 years' time, Julian. I mean, I think that's a great point. I still think there could be a Qatari ownership of Manchester United in 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I still think that might have to happen. I mean, it's worth considering. What if the Sir Jim and Glazer relationship doesn't work and they both have to find a way out? I think the Glazers will be loving how the heat is off them. Exactly, Phil. Brexit FC, Potter is a great coach. He will sell Bruno and put Mount at number 10. More control over games. Bruno is the common denominator problem, says Majak. Sounds like the media are starting to choose our next coach, and if Potter somehow becomes our new coach, we might as well accept we are a mid-team, says John. Gems has messed it as gifted a membership, and we'll lose 6-0 at Anfield with Ten Hag and Onana doing breaststroke on the pitch after the match is over, says Colin Felix. I think there's some cracking comments there. Keep them coming in, but I think the one that resonates with me most this morning is that this is sacking by media. You know, even if you like, let me just tell you the story again. So apparently, according to Neil Custis, Man United, Sir Jim Radcliffe are already spoken to Potter, wants him to replace Ten Hag. If Liverpool result is bad, Ten Hag could be sacked. Ineos will be in by next week. I mean, I don't believe any of that, but it's a news story, and, you know, it's quite a big news story, so of course we're going to react to it. But one of the big things I wanted to pull out from that, and somebody's just said it there with a super chat, is that this does feel like sacking by media. This feels like certain journalists and certain outlets are deciding, let's sack Erik ten Hag. I saw somebody say last night, and they were absolutely spot on. Newcastle are out of Europe, bottom of their group, with 5 points. And they are below Manchester United in the league. And Eddie Howe has been at Newcastle longer than Erik ten Hag has been at Manchester United. There are no calls for Eddie Howe to get sacked. In fact, Eddie Howe is a genius. But Erik ten Hag needs to go. He's been there less. He's higher in the league. He's finished higher in the league. He's won a trophy. And they're both out of Europe. One's a genius, one needs to be sacked. One's got multi-billionaire owners backing him, the other one's got Glazers behind him. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. What is the difference between what Eddie Howe and Erik ten Hag are doing? In fact, I think Eddie Howe's job's easier because he's actually got the backing of the media, billions in the bank, Saudi Arabia loan deals coming in 3 weeks' time. But yeah, this does feel like sacking by the media to me because, you know, this is how it works. And the thing is, as fans, we know how it works. We know how it works. It happened with Van Gaal. Van Gaal didn't get sacked till May, but Jose was the next manager at Christmas. And it makes people think, oh, I like that manager. I like that manager. I wouldn't be surprised if Potter's the fall guy. I wouldn't be surprised if this is the press putting Potter out there so everyone goes no, and then they'll put Zidane out there and everyone will go, oh, yeah. I just think we're manipulated. I've said this for years. I think we're being manipulated. I think we've always been manipulated. I think, you know, when we got beat 6 years ago, Gareth Bale was signing the next day, or Ronaldo. This is what happens. I think this is the drip effect to move us away from Ten Hag and basically sack him in the media, and then we're waiting for it to happen in reality. I can't believe that some of the fans are so short-sighted, says Andreas. Celtic performed better than United in the Champions League, says Guitar. What Kieran McKenna has done at Ipswich is incredible. Surely must be top of the list. Absolutely not, Jay. And I just want to say, look, Kieran McKenna, Michael Carrick and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at Man United was shit. Absolute shit. And that's not my words. That's the words of about 8 players who fed it out to various people that the training was absolutely terrible, right? What Kieran McKenna did is he went to the level he needed to go to. What Michael Carrick did is he went to the level he needed to go to. And what Ole Gunnar Solskjaer did is where he needed to be. No one will give him a job. Michael Carrick at Middlesbrough is learning the game and doing fantastically well. Kieran McKenna's doing even better. what he's done with Ipswich, top of the, right, they're going to get promoted. Absolutely brilliant. But Kieran McKenna can't be given the Man United job just because he's top of the Championship or second in the Championship. That's another mistake. That's another sentimental mistake. He's got to manage in the Premier League before he gets considered for a Man United job. You don't give Kieran McKenna the Man United job just because he's second in the Championship. Why don't we go and give the bloody Leicester manager the job as well then? This is it. It's just naivety. It's fucking Christmas, isn't it? Everyone's pissed on mulled wine. What are you talking about? We're Manchester United. The news is terrifying, says Ray Carl. I'm fed up of this flip-flop approach. Oh, Kieran McKenna's doing really good. Oh, Michael Carrick's doing all right at Middlesbrough. Rooney won last night with Birmingham. Should we give him the fucking job? We're Manchester United, for God's sake. If you're going to sack Erik ten Hag, imagine Kieran McKenna doing this job. Imagine Graham Potter doing this job. This dressing room at Manchester United didn't respect Mourinho, didn't respect Van Gaal, didn't respect Ollie, didn't respect Rangnick, and probably doesn't respect Ten Hag. And you want to give it to Graham Potter or Kieran McKenna or Michael Carrick? They don't respect goats of the game like Jose. They chew them up, they stab them in the back, and they spit them out. There isn't a manager out there that's going to do this until we clear the dressing room and change the recruitment and the structure above the manager. And even then, you need to bring in Ancelotti or someone like that. You've got to bring in a manager so fucking big and so respected and back him. You cannot bring in work experience. Graham Potter's a work experience manager. McKenna would be a work experience manager because they've got no experience of managing Premier League big clubs, and they've certainly got no experience of managing the juggernaut that is Manchester United. You don't just coach Manchester United, you are in the press, you are all over the world, you are basically like a prime minister. The job is huge and it swallows people up just the same as the goalkeeping position swallows somebody up. Graham Potter is actually a coach I like. I liked Potter at Brighton. I think he did a great job. I thought it was brave of Chelsea to take Graham Potter, and I was very interested and hoped he'd do well because I liked the fact that Chelsea had appointed a really good coach from Brighton, and I thought he deserved that chance. I wouldn't have wanted Man United to do it, but I thought fair play to Chelsea, and he failed massively because, and this is a fact, those Chelsea players did not respect him, did not think he was good enough for the job, and didn't play for him. So why would you give Graham Potter the Manchester United job when Chelsea chewed him up and spat him out and didn't respect him? Why would this dressing room respect him? Why would this fan base respect him? From day one, the problem with Chelsea was the fans just didn't buy into it. And from day one, it'd be David Moyes all over again. Good manager, but the job's too big for him. And I don't know. I very much doubt Ineos and Sir Jim are lining up Graham Potter to be the next Manchester United manager. But if they are, that's a big concern. For the things I've just said, I do like Potter. I think he needs to be back in football. I think he's a good coach. But I don't think he's a Chelsea, Manchester United, Man City, Liverpool, Arsenal manager. I think his ceiling is going to be probably Everton, something like that. Brighton again. He's not a Manchester United manager. And I mean, people say Brexit, this, that, and the other. It would be a massive mistake. What timescale would you put on United getting back to the glory days of old, says LP. Do you think it'll happen in your lifetime? Well, I hope it happens in my lifetime, LP. I mean, at least if it doesn't, I can say, well, I had those years. But, I mean, we're Manchester United. Bayern Munich, we should be doing what they're doing in the Bundesliga. We should be doing what they're doing in the Champions League. It's disgusting, the fall-off. Erik ten Hag was ridiculed for winning the Dutch league, but let's get the guy second in the Championship. Sure, says Patrick. Man United aren't going to get Kieran McKenna. I think Kieran McKenna could be a top-level coach in 5 years' time, but he's got to manage in the Premier League first. You can't be giving Championship managers jobs in the Premier League. I mean, this is what Chelsea did with Lampard. It's an absolute. They've got to manage in the Premier League, and also McKenna surely would want to manage Ipswich in the Premier League. It's amazing to go from League One to the Championship and then straight into the Premier League. Surely he would want to manage Ipswich in the Premier League. We should stick with Ten Hag, but curb his authority and recruitment, sort out the medical department and start building for the summer and next season, says Karim. Scotty says, how about Carrick? He's doing really well and did great after Rangnick. Nope. Ten Hag is the man for the job. No one would do a better job, but he needs to stop playing McTominay, says Jordan. I think all that this does, this link to Potter, this talk of Ten Hag getting sacked if he loses to Liverpool, all this does is confirm to me that Manchester United are not changing. We're still the club we've always been. Somebody said it a few minutes ago, the Glazers will be loving this because the pressure's off them. They still own the club. They still own all of Manchester United. Manchester United is still their football club. And yet people are talking about changing a manager again, what the future's going to be. The future is the Glazers, and there's no pressure on them at all. And we're looking at changing a manager again, which will just repeat the cycle of the last 10 years. What we need to do is put in place an infrastructure, like somebody said there, where there is accountability for mistakes. Erik Ten Hag should be scrutinised for his awful part in the transfer window that collectively, as a football club, was a disgrace. Not exclusively Ten Hag. He didn't get Kim Min-jae. We didn't get an experienced striker. We didn't sell Maguire, McTominay, Martial and Donny. You know, there was players that Ten Hag wanted to sell that we didn't sell. There was players that Ten Hag wanted to sign that we didn't sign. That's not on Ten Hag. But Ten Hag's accountable for Onana. Ten Hag's accountable for Mount. And you're right, you need a director of football that comes in above Ten Hag and says no, but gets things done as well. If Ten Hag had been told no about Onana in the summer, but we'd got him Kim Min-jae, and we'd sold Maguire, and we'd sold McTominay, and we'd sold Martial, and we brought another striker in, he probably would have dealt with it. But that's what you need a director of football for. That's what you need a CEO for. It all fits in together, really. Like yesterday, we were talking about how we need the infrastructure above the manager to say no and support him and have the expertise. And we need to clear out the dressing room of players that the manager doesn't want. Well, it's not rocket science. When you look at last summer, he actually tried to do that. He actually tried to get rid of 4 or 5 players that are still here now. So, you know, if we'd had the CEO and director of football in the summer, we'd already be on that pathway because we know for a fact he tried to sell 4 or 5 players that are still here. And we also know for a fact there's 2 or 3 players that he wanted that are now playing for other clubs. So if we'd had that infrastructure in place in the summer, we'd be in a better position now. We'd have 2 or 3 different players and we'd have 3 or 4 players gone. So it's not like Ten Hag doesn't want to play a part in that. He's stuck with players he tried to sell and he hasn't got players he tried to buy. And that's because of the way the club is run above him. So those changes can happen really, really quickly. And they have to happen really, really quickly. And I believe that those changes have to happen way before we change the manager. Because all I see if we go for someone like Graham Potter is put a hook here, put a hook here, put a hook here, put a hook here. Oh, I'm a puppet. I just see another puppet, and we do not want another puppet. That's the last thing that we want. Onana was a free transfer to Inter a year earlier. How did we pay 47 million for him, says SRM. And Mark, Connor says, Potter is a great manager, so much better than Ten Hag. We need Ten Hag and Steve McLaren, our awful decisions constantly. I'm backing Sir Jim, says Connor. Thank you. Well, it's all about opinion. I'm very anti having a British manager. There's underlying sinister goings on in the media that never accepted Ten Hag out, and it's sickening, says Nick P. Mate, I'm not going to say all of it, but I'm brought up English. You know, I've followed football all my life. I've read the. Rightly or wrongly, I used to love the Sunday morning newspapers. I used to have a paper round in the morning. I used to read all the papers from the Daily Mail to the Sun, to the Mirror, to the Guardian, the Times. I used to love getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning, going down the paper shop, delivering my papers, get all these different papers, walk around, read them as I posted them. I've consumed probably more news stories than most from the age of about 10 to now. It's just a passion of mine. I'm very interested in that sort of thing. And I can say from experience that throughout my whole time, from 10 years of age having a paper round to now, we've always had a fundamentally British biased media. Bordering on xenophobia at times. That is my opinion. And I've been happy to have this conversation for years. We see it all the time. Look at what's happening with Aaron Ramsdale and David Raya. Arteta bought David Raya because he wants him to be his number 1. They're still talking about it. They're still talking about it. I was on the radio yesterday morning talking about David De Gea. They brought up, and look, they've done it to Arsenal as well. They've got rid of a good goalkeeper for a foreign goalkeeper. And I'm like, you know, it is true. And it was almost like with Ten Hag and Poch, the press saw Poch as an honorary British man because he'd managed for Southampton and Spurs. We don't want this guy who's never managed here before. We want what we know. And you're right, it's true. I think there's always... I said when Ten Hag got the job, it was a fan choice. Watch out for the media because they didn't want him and they'll keep their knives sharpened in the drawer for when they can. They're out now. They're out now. And they think that they think they can influence you. They do. We see it all the time. They set the tone. The producers set the tone. The journalists set the tone. They think they can influence you. They think they can turn you. They still think that they can make fans turn on a manager, turn on a player. That's down to you whether you let it happen. Louise, welcome to the Members Club. So she gifted a membership. Thank you very much, Louise. But I would say to you, the Potter story, I think it's bollocks. I hope it's bollocks. But what it does show, and there is a validity to this, what it does show is the grass ain't greener. The grass ain't greener. And I've said this yesterday morning. I was very angry yesterday morning, and I'm very angry now. I can list the things I'm angry with about Man United. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable what's happening this season. Ten Hag has to take accountability for that. The club has to take accountability for that. But I do find the Ten Hag out movement lazy. That's all they've got. Most of them, that's all they've got. They're not interested in, why we've crashed out of the Champions League, the summer transfer window, what's happening with Sir Jim, what the next 5 years are going to be. It's just Ten Hag out. That's all they've got. Ten Hag out. They're not talking about anything else. And then you say, well, all right, let's sack the manager. Graham Potter, well, just roll the dice, see what happens. Like, you've got to have a fundamental plan. Mark, is the start of Brexit FC bring the Manchester back to Manchester United, says Jack? Well, I do remember, I had forgotten about that, Jack, actually. I do remember that comment from Sir Jim. It was in January, wasn't it? Let's put the Manchester back into Manchester United. I don't know what that means. I'm hoping it's just a naive misquote. I'm hoping it means something we don't think it means. Because putting the Manchester back into Manchester United, what does that even mean? Like, it doesn't even correlate. There's people flying over from Dublin who are season ticket holders every game. There's people driving up from London. There's people flying in from Europe, all around the world to come and watch Manchester United. David Beckham's from London. Cristiano Ronaldo's from Portugal. George Best was from Belfast. Duncan Edwards was from Dudley. Sir Bobby Charlton was from the North East. They're not Manchester. I'm not from Manchester. Most of you aren't from Manchester. So what does put the Manchester back into Manchester United mean? I was in Manchester on Monday night. First time I've been out, walking around Manchester at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning for a long, long time, in the clubs and in the pubs. And it's like Dublin. When I was in Dublin last year, I hadn't been to Dublin for about 7 years, and it's changed. It's changed for the better. It's so European, and Manchester's the same. Manchester isn't, that world. I mean, we're wandering into something else now, but that world doesn't exist anymore. We all know it doesn't exist anymore. I think for the better. We live in a diverse country, and hopefully a diverse world. What does putting the Manchester back into Manchester mean? Let's sell Casemiro, let's sell Varane, let's sell Bruno. I don't think that's what it meant. I don't know what it meant, but I don't think that's what it meant. You can't come into a football club and just get rid of foreign players and managers and bring in British players and a British manager. I mean, what football club in Premier League history has done that and been successful? I can't think of one. Leicester, they won it 1 year. They weren't predominantly British. We've never been predominantly British under Sir Alex. Certainly not Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City, Blackburn Rovers. Maybe they were, actually, but come on, how many years ago was that? Mark, I got my results back today and I got my degree in accounting. In other news, McCasper needs to be sold, and if we sack Ten Hag, I'll be devastated, says Braden. And also, the earth is but one country and mankind its citizens, says Big Z. Yeah, well, look, I don't know. The class of 92 were predominantly British, Chris, but they didn't make up the whole team. Mourinho told us what football heritage is. Rangnick told us we need open heart surgery. How can fans still want Ten Hag out and keep these shitty players? Open up your eyes, says Vitor. Yeah, and I think that as well, what you've also got to look at is that, I completely agree that Ten Hag could get the sack. I don't agree with him being the sack, but I completely agree he could be on the pathway to being sacked. I completely agree with the pressure. I completely agree with the accountability, and I completely agree with the questions that need to be answered. Look, let me just address two big things. I've spoken completely about Onana. It's amazing, actually. Have you seen that clip of the second goal, of the goal that Bayern scored yet? From behind the goal. I think I replied to it on Twitter yesterday. Somebody still thinks that Onana was right to stand to the left of the goal about a metre off his line. Every goalkeeper I've spoken to, I spoke to Watto yesterday, former England goalkeeper, a goalkeeping coach. He said, you've got to be rushing out there. His feet are all wrong. His position's wrong. He's anticipating a shot that doesn't even happen. He's got to be rushing out there. He probably doesn't save it, but he's got to rush it out there. So Onana's been an absolute disaster as a signing so far. Let's hope he can turn it around, but I think he's been a disaster. But the Mason Mount one's still there, you know, and I want Ten Hag to stay. But I also want to ask big questions. The McTominay thing is a disaster, an absolute disaster. I mean, he is crap. McTominay scores and everyone says it's fine. If he doesn't score a goal, the truth is there. What does he do? He's not good enough to play for a top 6 club. Simple as that. He's a bench player to get you a goal, hang around the box. He can't do anything else. And Mason Mount, I mean, I don't even understand that. Ten Hag was obsessed with Mason Mount. I don't even understand what we did. You know, I like the player, but I never understood how he was going to fit in. And I still don't understand at the moment. I can't see a world, and it amazes me that Ten Hag could. I couldn't see a world with Mason Mount and Odegaard in the same team. I can't see a world with Mason Mount and De Bruyne in the same team. I can't see a world with Mason Mount and Szoboszlai in the team. So I'm never going to see a world with Mount and Bruno in the team, and yet Ten Hag did. They're two strikingly similar players who want the ball to be fed to them. It's like Havertz and Odegaard. I don't think it works. You can't have two players who want the ball to go through them because you're halving the role of two players. Bruno wants the ball to go through him. Mount wants the ball to go through him. There's only one game. There's only, you need one player to do that, and we've got two. Great show, Mark. Putting Manchester back into Manchester, it means all English players and Potter is an English manager. Nothing shocks me anymore, says Tracy. Maybe Sir Jim Radcliffe has his own plan to rebuild United from scratch. Stop blindly siding with Ten Hag. He's made so many illogical and stupid moves since taking charge, says Da Vinci. And hi, Mark. I said it before the season, and I will say it again. I will back this manager, as I know it is so easy to make mistakes when you are working in a toxic environment. We need to focus on the real issues. Glazes out, says Karen. Well, it's a good point. It's a good point from Karan, because if you imagine you're at work today as a manager and you're accountable to the customer and the owners of the business, and you're working in an environment where you're desperately trying to improve something that's not been working well for a long time, but they won't remove the staff that are causing it. And then the staff that are causing it turn on you, and when you're trying to get reports and, projects completed, they're sabotaging them or slowing them down. And that is what being a Manchester United manager is all about. You bring competent people in to change an underperforming department, and that person is accountable to customers, the fans, and the owners of the business, the Glazers, etc. That person could be brilliant, but if you don't remove the toxic elements within the underperforming team, those toxic elements will still down tools. They will still sabotage. They will still cause problems. And that, to me, is the most logical thing. Why, as an owner of the business, would I keep changing the competent person I'm bringing in to get this team working and then drop them into a place where the toxic element are there sabotaging and downing tools? You've got to remove the toxic element. And the reason the Glazers never want to do it is because to remove the toxic element costs you money. And that's what it all comes down to. They want a miracle where somebody comes in and gets the toxic element to play well, because it won't cost them any money then. But it won't work. And this is why so many of us said we needed a full sale, a clearance of the debt, and a clear out, and a basically knock it down and start again. That's what we needed to happen. I don't know whether that will happen. I don't know whether Sir Jim Radcliffe's plan is that. I'm certainly accepting and a realist that we aren't getting a full sale and we aren't getting a clearance of the debt and we aren't getting billions of pounds like Man City and Newcastle did. So I'm very much, and have to be, open to what Ineos and Sir Jim are going to offer. I just wish we'd get on with it, because the current situation is unpalatable. Rebuilding doesn't mean the manager gets one bad season, then you sack him. Klopp had a couple of bad seasons, and so did Arteta, says SW. Well, look, as I say, I think this Potter story is quite interesting in the sense that, you know, we've got a lot of people talking about sacking a manager, but then this is what you could end up with. Conte's free, Potter's free, Hansi Flick is free, there's somebody else, Lopetegui is free. You're not... there's only one... There's probably... If somebody said to me, Erik ten Hag has quit, and you get to choose the next manager, there's probably 2 or 3 I would go with in world football right now. Off the top of my head, I'd be trying to get Ancelotti from Real Madrid. I'd be trying to get Klopp from Liverpool, which these would never happen either. I don't think I'd go for Pep. I don't think I would go for Pep, because Pep's experience is checkbooks. I don't think Pep would suit this job. I think Ancelotti or Klopp, because they've got experience of running lots of different clubs. And you know what? If he had any magic left, Jose probably, if I'm being absolutely honest. I just think the job is too big for 99.9% of managers in world football. This job is too big. Way, way too big. And I wouldn't go for Zidane. And I wouldn't go for Conte. And I wouldn't go for Flick. I think they're all going to fail at Manchester United. I just think that there is no magic pill, basically. There is no manager that's going to come in and do this job, because even if you took De Zerbi from Brighton, which I think is just a hipster choice, if I'm being honest, De Zerbi's not impenetrable. De Zerbi's not, you know, the new Mourinho. De Zerbi loses a lot of games. De Zerbi plays quite open. And also, I think De Zerbi would come to Man United, and certain egotistical players at United would go, "Who are you?" And I think we have to acknowledge that. We've seen it before. I mean, I'll go back to what I said. You've got to realise that this dressing room is not the same dressing room that Van Gaal had or Jose had, but there are players that were here when Jose was here, and also there are players that from the Jose era that aren't here anymore have spent time with players that are here now, and it gets passed down. It's like passing down a hobby through a family, isn't it? Oh, my granddad used to play golf. My dad used to play golf. I play golf. Great. And I think that's the same with the Man United dressing room. This learnt behaviour has just passed itself down from year to year to year. Jose Mourinho was forced out of the club by a toxic dressing room. One of the greatest managers ever to manage in the game was forced out by our dressing room. And you think Potter or De Zerbi or someone like that's going to come in and demand respect? You need to look at the recent history. That dressing room, look at what they did to Rangnick. You know, I heard bloody Goldstein on TalkSport yesterday calling him Wreck-It Ralph. Now, he's a bit of a prat himself and doesn't really know what he's talking about, but the fact that Ralph Rangnick has that nickname of Wreck-It Ralph is just massively disrespectful. He's probably spoke the most sense in that football club in the last 10 years and wasn't meant to be the coach. He was meant to be the bloody director of football. What happened with Rangnick is he was meant to be the director of football, and he said he'd do the job for 6 months just to steer the ship until the summer, and they fucking threw him out. Disgusting behaviour. But the fact that some of the media still take the piss out of Rangnick just shows you the complete and utter lack of knowledge about the basics of football that some people in the media have. They want to go and check who Rangnick is and what his role in the evolution of football over the last 10 years are, and his massive influence he's had on managers such as Nagelsmann and Tuchel and Klopp. But no, we associate him with an offensive nickname, and you know, some people think he's a twat. But most Man United fans actually think Ralph Rangnick was way ahead of the game and knew exactly what the problems were, but was dealing with a toxic dressing room that couldn't give a shit. To be fair, you did call it a few years back, saying we will continue to reach new lows. Potter would get eaten alive by this group, says JV. 100%, 100%. As AK says, Rangnick was the godfather of the Gegenpress. Yeah, And yet he's been associated. I actually felt that Rangnick got more shit than Ollie did that season, and Ollie caused it because Rangnick just came in and inherited a team that had given up. But yeah, you know, this is what I mean. Any injury news, says Anton? Well, oh yeah, on injury news, apparently Luke Shaw might be available for Liverpool. I think it was Insider United tweeted it this morning that the reaction to the injury hasn't been as bad as many thought, and he may well, if he trains tomorrow, he might be involved for the Liverpool game, which obviously we're going to be previewing tonight. The show goes on in a certain sense, doesn't it? Gerd says, you're better than that, Mark, so just take gossip from the media as a talking point on this platform. I'm not better than that, Gerd, because it's a news show. So the morning show has been a news show for about 9 years. So I don't know what you think you're watching. United players look like, because of the history of the club, they would just be handed it to them without the works, says Dansky. And when Potter went to Chelsea after Tuchel, it was off to a bad start with the fans straight away. And I think it would be the same if he came to United, says Jordan. Well, yeah, look, Jordan, I mean, look, if Graham Potter, let's live in a fantasy world because I can't see it happening. But if Graham Potter got the job, just like any signing I'm not happy with, I will give them a chance. I didn't want David Moyes. I was adamantly against David Moyes, but I did give him a chance. But when you know, don't you? And I think that would just be they won't do that. I don't believe the story. I really do not think that Manchester United would do that. But look, Sam, who works with United Stand on Twitter at Sam at _C345 has said, why did the Sun continue to let Neil Custis write absolute made up rubbish in the paper? De Gea coming back, false. Qatar next week, false. Sir Jim wants Potter, false. When's it going to end? And look, it is a news story. And I think that, you know, you've got to question it. You've got to question why somebody would put a story out like that. And that's why, Gerd, I wanted to discuss it this morning, because it might go over your head, but I don't think it goes over the majority. Sometimes a news story, even though we don't think it's true, allows us to comment on why we think it's out there and also expose the problems if there was any truth in it. So I don't think Neil Custis is telling the truth, in the sense that I don't think his source is correct. I don't think we're going to give Graham Potter the job. I also don't think if we lose to Liverpool, Ten Hag's going to get the sack. So I think on 2 points he's wrong. But what I find interesting about it is that, again, it's the media trying to destabilise a Man United manager, which I think we have to call out as a community, so therefore it has to be on the news show. And second, and most importantly of all, it highlights that for those people who want to sack the manager, the grass will not be greener. I literally spoke to people on Monday night at the United Stand show in Manchester. I literally was speaking to people who said, you know what, Mark, I like the United Stand, I love the community, but I am Ten Hag out. And I went, that's fine. There's people who are going to be Ten Hag out, that's fine. But can I just ask you what I ask on the show all the time? What's your plan when you sack Ten Hag? And a lot of people were saying, well, they'd offer up a name and I'd laugh, but they'd also go, well, I just think it's just not working with Ten Hag, so whatever we try is going to be better. And I'm like, but that's what we've done for 10 years and it doesn't get any better. It doesn't get any better. And I said to them, look, if I was the CEO and you said to sack the manager, I would say this to you. I'm not sacking the manager because the players, that dressing room has sacked so many managers. So this time I'm going to change the dressing room. And I'm also going to bring in a director of football to be a little bit more authoritative and tell Ten Hag no and support him. Those are the two things I'm going to do for the next 12 months. And let's see where we are in 12 months. That's what I think needs to happen. Potter has the same ceiling as Ten Hag. Potter did amazing in Norway, similar to Ten Hag, and smashed Europa League. You cannot put Ten Hag above him, says Rick. I think I can. The Eredivisie is not Norway. The Europa League is not the Champions League. And Erik Ten Hag, as Ajax coach, if Man United hadn't gone for him, he would have ended up getting a big job. His trajectory was a big job. So Potter and Ten Hag, in my opinion, are poles apart. Bruno gets slated in the media. Top chances created in the Premier League, says MB. And take an interim, try to get a bounce and save the season. We need fourth, Mark, otherwise there is no rebuild. Sin Games, we are not getting fourth place in the Premier League this season. If you think we're getting 4th place, then you're very naive. I mean, if you're telling me let's sack Ten Hag to get 4th place, you've just wasted 40 million quid, because it's going to cost that to sack Ten Hag and his coaches and then replace them. What people don't realise is that Ten Hag's got a coaching team with him as well, a senior coaching team. So you're going to spend 40 million on the hope that you can get 40 million. Look at that league table and tell me we're going to get 4th. 4th place is Man City at the moment. That's 6 points. And we won't catch Man City. So you've got to look at Villa. That's 8 points. And we're playing Liverpool at the weekend. We're not closing that gap. We are not closing that gap. And Newcastle going out last night, well, that screws us as well, like we've screwed everyone else, because 5th place for the Champions League was based on how English clubs perform in England. Well, Newcastle and Man United have just gone out completely, so we've hardly scored any points for the English coefficiency. So we are going to be fighting for 5th, 6th, 7th this season, maybe even lower. But I would hope that if we can get Martinez back, get Casemiro back, we can stabilise. People like Mainu, Højlund and Garnacho grow, and maybe Rashford comes back into form, and we maybe stabilise and get 5th or 6th. But I don't see us getting top 4. We're not good enough. Paddy, thank you very much for the super chat. If clubs didn't sack underperforming managers, how would they succeed? These Erik Ten Hag FC make me laugh, says Tech. Mate, but I don't know whether you're new or you're old. I've never seen your name before. And, clubs do sack managers. Of course they do. And as I said, I acknowledge that Ten Hag's on the road to sacking. But you've not, in your statement, you've just sort of confirmed what many of us believe, is that the Ten Hag out movement is just lazy. Because you're obsessed with it, and it's all you shout, but you don't give us any. You don't give us any plan. You don't give us any alternative. We're literally talking this morning about the alternative being Graham Potter. Is that what you're screaming and shouting for? It probably excites some people because they're probably more than happy to stick their hand in a hole and see what they pull out. But I'm not. I'm not happy with that. I'm not sacking a manager until we do things that need to happen first. And that is clear out that dressing room and put an infrastructure above a manager that we've not had in a long, long time. Bruno is on a top chances created, yet our striker never gets clear-cut chances. How does this work, says Michael. And England is top of the UEFA coefficients for UEFA. That's what it says on the website. You're wrong, Kyle. The reason you're wrong, Kyle, is you're probably looking at the coefficients table for the last 5 years. This is exclusively based on this season, and we're either 3rd or 4th at the moment. We might be 4th after last night because AC Milan was an Italian club, and I think the Spanish clubs did all right. But it's based on this season, only this season, and we're not top. We were 3rd yesterday. Glazers are the reason for United's demise as a top club. What the next 5 years will look like is dependent on on-field success, says Tom. And Kieran says, Ten Hag needs to stay. Sacking him will make things worse. We can't justify getting rid at this moment in time, says Kieran. And of course, another depressing point is that I don't agree with, and Ten Hag out movement won't agree with, is actually a reason I don't want to talk about, is that, of course, they won't sack him. They won't sack him because they can't afford to sack him. And that I disagree with that. And I'm sure anybody who wants Ten Hag to stay disagrees with that. You can't keep a manager just because you can't afford to sack him. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. But that will be a big factor in the board. I don't want to sack him because, for a footballing point of view, I think there's other things that need to be done first. But they won't sack him because of money as well. Anyway, look, we've got a fantastic video coming out for you at 2 o'clock, an insight into Manchester United. We were at Carrington yesterday, so check out that video. I've got the preview for the Liverpool game live at 8 o'clock as well, so join in for that. Have a good day, whatever you're doing. Take care. Obviously, leave your comments below. And Jose Mourinho's Chelsea side only conceded 15 goals in the entirety of the 2004-05 season, says Peddy. Premier League season compared to United's Champions League group, where we did it in 6 games. Yeah, exactly. Take care, everyone. Have a fantastic day, and I'll speak to you all in a bit.